Hey everyone, this is Mike and welcome to my beginner's guide to crafting in Final Fantasy XIV. Now, if you've never set foot into any of the crafting stuff, then this video will probably explain pretty much everything that you need to know, from what does different stats do to different actions, what kind of actions you have and all of that kind of stuff. Now, because crafters have so many different actions available to them, like if I open up my actions real quick over here, you can see there's quite a lot of stuff in here. So I'm not going to go over pretty much everything that is in here, of course. I'm just going to explain what the three main different actions are that you have, which are your synthesis actions, your touches, and then of course your buffs as well. And I'm going to quickly go over some of the skills that you're probably going to be using the most. And then I'm also going to show you a little bit like how an actual craft kind of works as well. But I'm not going to be talking about quite literally everything there is to know, because then this video will probably go like 20-30 minutes long, and I don't want it to be a very long video either. Hopefully in about 10 minutes or something like that I can kind of give you an idea of how the crafting system works in this game. So because of that, I'm not going to go over all of the skills. I'm going to talk about a few of them because they're pretty important, but other than that, it's going to hopefully remain relatively simple. Now, when it comes down to your stats as a crafter, you basically have three stats that you have to worry about. You have craftsmanship, control, and then CP down here. Craftsmanship means that your progress actions are going to be stronger, aka your synthesis. Your control is going to make your touch actions stronger, aka for your quality. And then CP is basically your mana, so to speak. The more CP you have, the more actions you can use, or the more expensive actions that you can use as well. Because for example, some actions in here, like for example Waste Not 2, 98 CP is quite expensive to use, so having extra CP is always going to be a very good thing. Now, I'm not going to use like a super difficult recipe over here to show that off, because I don't want to be using crafter food and that kind of stuff. So I'm going to be showing the hardest Kaishir recipe. It's only level 73, but this should at least give you an idea of how crafting kind of works, because of course you're not going to be getting those super difficult endgame recipes as you're leveling up your crafters and that kind of stuff either. So to craft something, you just want to click on what you want to craft and then press synthesize. And then we get a couple of different things that we can see here. So we can open up this little arrow thingy here, which will show us all of our buffs. Since I am going to be making a collectible, my collectible synthesis buff is on. For normal crafts, you don't need this, of course. You also don't necessarily need to open this thing, because this will just show all of the buffs that you have, that you also have on your buff hotbar. I'll keep it open just to show you guys. But normally you technically don't need this, because you can just look at your buff hotbar. Now, when you click on the calculations button, then this little window right here will open up, and this is very useful for people that are new to crafting, because this will quite literally show exactly what your action is going to be doing. So for example, if I were to use my basic synthesis, then my progress, which I need 3,348 of, will increase by 1,024. So it's good to know exactly how much something is going to be doing. I personally don't really use this all that much, because I just pretty much know how the crafting works already. But if you want to know specifics, like for example, if I use this one action, is my craft gonna fail? Is my craft gonna finish? Or will I have enough quality? Something like that. Then you can just look in here. We have two steps, one for progress, so this is for the progress bar, and then one for quality, which is of course for the quality bar. Crafting itself is very simple. Whenever you use a action, your durability is going to go down. Depending on what action you're using, this could go down by 10, for example. Like this thing, careful synthesis, costs 10 durability. Prudent touch only costs 5, but then something like, for example, groundwork costs 20. So depending on which one you're going to use, your durability is going to go down by a certain amount. There are skills that you can use to also combat this. So for example, Waste Not and Waste Not 2 will cut your durability loss in half. So that's very useful if you're using those very expensive skills like groundwork and prudent preparatory touch, since they cost 20 durability. We also have Master's Mend. This will just restore your durability, in this case 30. So that's pretty useful to have if you're not quite sure which of your skills that you want to use. Or for example, you come in a situation where it's like, oh shit, I need to do 2 actions to finish the craft, but I only have like 1 action's worth of durability left. Then you can use Master's Mend to kind of save it that way. And then we also have Manipulation, which after each step that you take will restore 5 points of durability. So usually I like to use Manipulation whenever I am using 10 cost or 5 cost durability actions. I use Waste Not when you're using those expensive ones that cost 20 durability instead. That's pretty much kind of how I go about doing those. Now, one more thing before we get started is your condition. This thing can change into normal, good, excellent, and poor. and this will affect your quality increases. So we have two different types of skills. We have our progress increasing skills, which are our synthesis actions, and we have our quality increasing skills, which are our touches. Now, the condition only affects the quality skills, so only the touches are affected by this. Now, when it's normal, nothing special will happen. When it is good, it's kind of like getting a crit on your craft, so to speak. When it is excellent, it's kind of like getting a direct hit crit on your touch action, so it's going to increase by a significant amount. But after each excellent proc, you are going to be getting a poor, and this is basically a negative effect where the next touch you're going to be doing is going to have quite the weak effect, so to speak. So basically, normal is 0%, good is, let's say, 50% increase, and then excellent is like 100% increase. But then, for example, when you have poor, it's like minus 50%, something like that. Those are probably not the exact numbers, but kind of like to give you an image of what it kind of looks like. So synthesis to finish your progress, touch to finish your quality, and then try to make sure you don't lose your durability, that it doesn't go to 0, because then your craft will break. The idea is that your quality should be as high as possible, and then you use your progress to finish the craft. The higher you get this to 100%, the higher the chance of getting a high quality item will be. And it is of course very important to try and get a high quality item, because as you can see, a no quality item, for example in this case the Tincture of Strength, will only give you 250 stats, whereas the high quality Tincture of Strength will give you 312. So getting it to high quality is pretty important. So try to have this quality bar all the way full before you finish the craft, or at least as close as possible before you finish that craft. Now, because this is a collectible, I can't get this HQ, but it's just to kind of like give you an idea of how that works. Now, before we start the craft, there is one very important thing that we have to do, and that is activate our Inner Quiet buff. There are two ways you can do this. You can just use the skill Inner Quiet, which will give you 1 stack of Inner Quiet and then give you the buff as well, or we can use Reflect. You can only use Reflect at the start of the craft. I would recommend you use this when you get it available to you, because this is a level 69 skill, but this will immediately give you 3 stacks. The reason why Inner Quiet is so important is if I, for example, open up my stats over here, look at my control, 2300, if I now use my Reflect and give myself 3 Inner Quiet stacks, my control jumps up to 3200. So the usual crafting flow, so to speak, is you're going to be building up Inner Quiet stacks by using those touch actions, and thus also increasing your quality to give yourself more control. And then all the way at the end, when we have reached a certain amount of Inner Quiet stacks, that's where we're going to super buff ourselves with a bunch of quality increasing buffs, and then we are going to be using our combo finisher, so to speak, which is Bjerregaard's Blessing. So I'll show that off in just a second as well. Now, when we are doing our quality increasing actions, we also want to be using a quality boosting buff as well, basically, which is going to be Innovation. This will increase the strength of all of our touch actions by 50%. So I'm going to be using my Innovation. As you can see, it'll pop up over here as well, just basically make it a little bit bigger so you guys can see it as well. And then I'm just going to be using some touch actions. Now, because I don't want to lose my durability, I'm also going to use Manipulation so that my durability will stay about the same. Should have technically used that before my Innovation, but it's quite fine. As you can see, we get a good proc, so what was just a normal increase is now going to be like a crit. As you can see, a little crit over here. I'm just going to do one more till my Innovation buff runs out. Now, normally at this point, of course, you won't have as much quality as I do right now, because this is a simpler craft. But when it comes down to doing a finisher, you want to use Innovation, going into Great Strides, and then we use our Bjerregaard's Blessing, which is our finisher move. And then we finished our quality. Now, because we are now done with the quality, we can move over to the progress. So just like with our quality increase, we have a progress increasing action as well, or buff, which is called Veneration. So I'm going to be using that as well. So you can see 4 stacks of Veneration. And then I can just use, for example, Careful Synthesis to just finish the craft that way. And there we go, craft has been finished. So I'm just going to close this window over here because we don't need that anymore. And I'm just going to do it yet another time. So, craft is open. Put this to the side a little bit so that you can see the numbers pop up as well. We use our Reflect or just Inner Quiet, depending on which one you have available to you. And now I'm going to show you a different way of crafting as well. So I'm going to still be using my Innovation buff, but this time around I'm going to be using Delicate Synthesis instead. This is really good because it increases both the progress as well as your quality at the same time. So one more, if I'm not quite sure if one more is going to finish the craft or not, I can just open up my calculations, can look at progress, and then for example right here, delicate synthesis, at 100 efficiency, progress by 852. 852, that is coming very close. I think that will basically just like finish the craft right here, so I can't do another one. So I want to be using my finisher first, so I'm just gonna do innovation, great strides, and we even got a good proc, and then our Bjerregaard's blessing. There we go, finished. And then we can use, for example, a careful synthesis to finish it off. Again, if you're not quite sure, go look in here, careful synthesis 1200, that'll be enough to finish it off. So careful synthesis, and there we go, finished it yet again. I'll do one more to show you off again. So we use our reflect. Maybe we'll do it a little bit different again this time. So we use our manipulation, we use our innovation, and then let's say we use our prudent touches again to just finish the quality first and then worry about the progress. So do a couple of these, innovation, great strides, Bjerregaard, finish that one, use our veneration buff, and then we can start using our careful synthesis to start finishing the craft. So this is pretty much what the crafting flow kind of looks like. You build up inner quiet stacks. We'll just use the normal inner quiet this time around, instead of the one that gives us 3 stacks. Manipulation, innovation, just use delicate synthesis again, because why not? And then 3, a 4th one would finish it, so I'm not going to do the 4th one. So I'm going to be using one more normal, like prudent touch, innovation, great strides, Bjerregaard to get our finisher going. As you can see, bam, half of our quality just increased, and then we can just use another careful synthesis to finish off our craft. So as you can see, that's kind of like a TLDR to crafting. It's relatively simple to get into it. Of course, at the lower levels, you don't have all of these skills available to you just yet. So as you get new skills, kind of read what they do, get used to what they are doing for you as well. But for the most part, crafting is a relatively simple process. Of course, a lot of crafting can also be macroed, as you can see here in my macros. I have a bunch of macros when it comes down to crafting for like different items, different high tier of like endgame recipes, like all of these master recipes basically. Depending on which one that I want to craft, I have different macros for all of them. So technically, once you reach level 8, you don't even need to know what all of these skills do if you just want to macro craft your way through endgame. But if you're interested in kind of like how it all worked, then now you should have a pretty decent idea of how crafting kind of works. You use your synthesis to increase your progress. Progress at 100% will finish the craft. You use those durability, like saving actions to make sure that your item doesn't break, and then you use your touch actions to try to get your quality as high as possible to try and get a high quality item when you do finish that progress of the craft. But that's pretty much gonna be it for me. I hope it was helpful. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask them in the comments, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. But with that being said, I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank my Patreons for supporting me, and I'll see you in the next one.